Hi, it's Elizabeth here. So I wanted to do this video in regards to mind control and brainwashing and just trying to help you guys understand a little bit more about what that is. I, at the age of 22, did the whole yoga in India thing. And when you go through a deep, profound soul transformation experience like that by doing yoga and meditation every day for a month and a half, you tend to break free from a lot of restraints that happen psychologically, but also you shed your ego and you start to see life and view life through a very spiritual lens. And the more that you start to purify your mind and your body, your perceptions and things start to shift and change, and you see how controlled and brainwashed our society is. Before I moved to Germany with my ex-husband, I got rid of the television. When I moved in October of 2014, I threw that television out. We didn't have a television while we lived abroad, and I never bought one when we got back. And, we are divorced now, but I still don't own a television. And I did live abroad in Australia twice in my undergraduate degree, and during those two experiences, I never owned a television. We did have a TV, I think, in our furnished apartment when I lived there in 2005, but I think I only watched it like a handful of times. So I've been through these experiences when I've been away from the television and from mass marketing, but also from certain groups and systems. And you really start to transform and see how mind controlling all of this is. And I've talked about this in another video on why I no longer worked with sport management before, is because when I took endorsement and sponsorship classes, the instructor basically told us you find the hottest athlete of the time and you put them on the box of Wheaties or the label of Sprite. And that's kind of how you get kids sucked into buying these products to make them believe that they're going to become a better athlete. And I was like, this is total mind pollution. Like, I morally could not work in that industry, because the message that you're sending a child, I could not literally do that to brainwash a kid to make them think that some can of soda is going to make them a better basketball player. And so the further you disconnect yourself from this stuff, the more you see how brainwashed and mind-controlled humans are, especially in today's world of consumerism, in not only in the Western world, but specifically America. And not only owning a television has been one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. It's because I am free from all of that control, basically. So I do want to talk a little bit about mind control and brainwashing. So the two are similar. They're a little bit different in some degree. And then hopefully once I start reading some of this stuff, you can discern and use some judgment in your own life to see where you are being controlled, or if your certain group or favorite YouTube channel and things like that are trying to like lure you and bait you in with a bunch of shit information. I do really think we need to protect our mind. I really think we have to protect what goes in it. Or if you do at least listen and watch something, it's really important not to go down the rabbit hole and just get sucked into a system without stepping back and analyzing the importance of your health and well-being while learning, receiving that message, and just seeing how things change in your life. Are you constantly stirred into watching dramatic reality shows all day? Are you sucked into shopping? All of these things are some form of mind control, because we live in such a stressful world. We work so much in America that we just want to numb ourselves and escape when we get home, and a lot of people do that in front of the television. So the definition of brainwashing is a method for systematically changing attitudes or altering beliefs, originated in totalitarian countries, especially through the use of torture, drugs, or psychological stress techniques. Another definition is any method of controlled systematic indoctrination, especially one based on repetition or confusion. You see a lot of that through like television commercials. And an instance of subjecting or being subjected to techniques. So sometimes that can happen with like a presenter that's on stage. So there is a little bit of a difference between mind control, mind manipulation, and brainwashing. So mind control is also known as manipulation It's also known as thought reform, brainwashing, mental control, coercive persuasion, coercive control, malignant use of group dynamics, and also there are many other different options and opinions. But the fact is that there are so many names, and people tend to not really agree which one is right or wrong or this, that, and the other. They can't really discern that. It allows for some form of confusion and distortion to be in place. So mind control comes under the umbrella of persuasion and influence. And these persuasive thoughts or behaviors and the influences and the influencer, like the leader or whatever, changes people's belief systems as well as their behavior. So some will argue that everything is some form of manipulation, and that might actually be true. However, saying this is important distinctions are lost. So it's much more useful to think of influence as a continuum. At one end of the spectrum, you have ethical and respectful influences which respect the individual as well as his or her rights. Now, at the other end of the spectrum is where you have the destructive influences which strip away a person's identity, their independence, and their ability to critically think logically and to take away the thought process on how to use your mental faculties. And that, I think, I think is where the biggest problem is today, is that people cannot seem to use their mental faculties, not only to discern whether something is right or wrong, but whether whatever they're watching or the leader that they're talking about is for their betterment or not. I mean, we have so many different wars going on. You have physical war, you have a gender war, you have all this, you have the obesity and the food war and the pharmaceutical war. We have all this shit going on. But the biggest thing, like if you look at the gender war, I've talked about this so many times in other videos, is this division between men and women. A lot of this is happening because of the radicalization of feminism, as well as with men or people in the red pill movement. These movements can be hardcore enough to where they attract people who are damaged goods on both sides of the spectrum that have been hurt by both genders or the opposite gender. And then it's attracting people who are just kind of curious about women's rights, or like the sensitive, emotional guy who doesn't really have any luck with women because maybe he's too soft or too quiet. And then they become sucked in and radicalized into this perspective to think like all women want to be fucked like a porn star and all this stuff like that. So these movements are radically changing people's behaviors. Like a sweet, nice, sensitive guy probably just wants to get married and have a family, and they're getting sucked into these movements to, try to become a player when his authentic self is not a player at all. So at the destructive end of the spectrum of mind manipulation and mind control is where you see a lot of cults and sects. And so these groups are using some form of deception and mind control tactics to take advantage of a person's weakness, as well as the strengths of the members to satisfy their needs and the desires of the cult leaders. If we go into politics, Donald Trump is definitely a self-absorbed narcissist. He is whether you agree with his politics or not, he is a reflection of what society in America is nowadays. Everybody can point their finger and say he's an asshole, but they will not look at their own narcissistic behavior, all that shit they put out on social media. And the Democrats, I am so detached in politics these days, and the Democrats, I was always not a hardline Democrat, but I was also I voted for Obama. I was a softie. I just wanted to see the world hold hands together because, that was like my spiritual beliefs at the time. And these people have taken advantage of the weak, the innocent, and the kindness of people. The whole love wins everything and love trumps hate absolutely has an effect. And innocent and weak people can be extremely manipulated. And I say this because I've been there. I've never been a weak person, but I have been persuaded, and I felt like I've been lied to for an extremely long periods of time. And I felt like my kindness was manipulated, not only to believe certain things in politics, but I've also had this with men in the past that have completely shitted on my innocence and kindness and things like that. And that's where you really have to like wake up and just, you can still be innocent like a dove, but live life with the wisdom of the serpent to realize like what is someone's intention here. It takes away the innocence and the purity of life, but this is where we're at nowadays, where we have to have some sort of protective boundary to protect ourselves. And so mind control is a system of influences that significantly disrupts an individual at their very core and at their level of their identity. So their identity includes their value system, their beliefs, their preferences, their decisions, their behaviors, their relationships, etc. So when somebody is manipulating someone's identity, this also creates a new pseudo-identity or a pseudo-personality. It can, of course, be used in beneficial ways with, for example, a drug addict can be influenced to become a better, healthier, and happier person. So to some degree, some form of, manipulation can be used in a positive manner, but for the most part, because humans are so corruptible, they tend to use it in a negative way to bring people down and to destruct their identity, to get them sucked into a new behavior pattern. So there is a psychologist named Philip Zimbardo, and he says that mind control is a process by which individual or collective freedom of choice and action is compromised by agents and agencies that modify or distort perception, motivation, affect cognition, and or behavioral outcomes. And he suggests that everyone is susceptible to such mind manipulation. It is a combination of words and group pressures packaged in a way that it allows a manipulator to create dependency with his and her followers, making their decisions for them while allowing them to think that they are independent and free to decide. That's really, really important. The person being mind controlled is not aware of the influence process nor the changes occurring within themselves. And that's where, if you do read the Bible, 2 Corinthians 11:14 is my favorite biblical verse, and it says, Satan masks himself in light. Darkness masks himself in light, and so any sort of cult behavior, there are cults in the yoga industry, in any form of spirituality, in Christianity, in Islam, in Buddhism, there are cults in so many different ways. Obviously being like a neo-Nazi is a cult and stuff like that. And Antifa is a cult. Those two parties are on the completely different political end of the spectrum. But these people are sucked in. And I say this because I've been down this before. Like, I've been indoctrinated by certain spiritual communities. Generally, that time was once yoga, and at another time it was Buddhism. And I didn't really realize what was kind of going on at the time until I broke away and pulled back. And the same thing is in consumerism or with social media. A lot of people don't realize that the people that they follow and a lot of stuff that we promote and put out there, is actually garbage. There's a lot of people who, people think they have great wisdom and things to say, but they're actually not understanding certain philosophies or theories correctly. And the way that they talk about it and promote it is actually damaging people more than leading them on. For example, like the follow your heart, that's following your emotions and stuff like that. And it's like, well, why should you not follow your brain? Why can't you balance it all, like the head and the heart? Is very necessary to make a lot of wise decisions in life. Following your heart can lead you to paths of sadness and darkness. You might really love somebody who is a bloody narcissist, and that person will suck your soul away. And just because you followed your heart, you followed some quote that, follow your heart. If you love them, you'll do this. And then they find themselves completely zapped and their soul sucked out because they followed their heart without using, their mental faculties and stuff. So let's see. Okay. So certain things with mind control and mind manipulation is that it's a subtle and an insidious process. And what this means is that the individual is not necessarily aware of the extent of the influences being imposed on them. So in this way, they're making small changes over time, believing that they are making decisions for themselves, when in fact all the decisions are being made for them. Insidious because it is intended to entrap and do harm. So if something that you're reading or watching is instilling a lot of fear, fear mongering, it's breeding negativity, which is like 90% of the media that's out there today, you really do need to filter and control yourself and understand when it is time to not read this stuff and walk away, because negativity breeds negativity and it's really easy to get sucked into these systems. All right, so one person, Steve Hassan, says that there is an interesting distinction between mental control and brainwashing. He says brainwashing, a victim knows that the aggressor is an enemy. So that example is, I guess like their example is saying like a prisoner of war. So like you know that you are being influenced by and or abused by someone who is your enemy. However, mind control is a little bit more subtle and sophisticated because the person doing the manipulation is often considered a friend, a teacher, you know, someone of a, I don't know, like a community leader or someone who has tons of education that can kind of guide people back to, you know, a good path. And they are really just distorting a lot of things to bring a lot of followers in. That's why if you are into a lot of these like online systems, you have to really use your intuition and your judgment to see what type of, you know, these online systems that work for you, because so many people can promise, you know, weight loss or abundance or attract love in your life if you just follow this 30-day program, and it, you know, they're just doing it for their benefit and gain of taking advantage of the weak and filling you with a bunch of bullshit that's probably not going to work. Mind control they say it's more dangerous because it is an effective message that is happening continuously throughout time, and that's because coercion can change behavior, but coercive persuasion, which is mind control, will change beliefs, attitudes, thinking processes, and the behavior. Basically, it is a personality change. And the victim happily and actively participates in the changes, thinking that it is for their betterment when they are actually have been tricked. And a lot of these people who do promote a lot of stuff, I just go back to this whole red pill and feminism thing, because it's like, I watched, you know, this red pill movement. They're giving dating advice. One guy is a graphic designer for the gambling industry. And then the other guy, I think he talked about like his dating, like a lot of his dating experiences was in Las Vegas. And like anybody with a fucking ounce of intellect in their brain knows that nobody goes to Las Vegas or enters the gambling industry to find pure love, true love, and their soulmate. This is like the bottom of the barrel carp catfish people that are ground sucking, you know, a society through drugs and hedonism, you know. So of course you're going to attract slutty girls and then shitty guys. And you know what? Attracting all those low lives, whether they're men or women, you know, that altered their belief system to say like all women want to be banged and all this. They like all that makeup sex because it's rough and all that stuff. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, these men are getting influenced and persuaded by guys who lived in Sin City or who work in an industry that has zero, like, love. It's not coming from the light. It's not godly love. It's fucking darkness. It's hedonism. And you know, you're going to see these men get radicalized and change, and they're going to start treating women like shit, and then that's going to ripple effect to get women to be more independent, to have to survive on their own, or they're going to become more feminist and stuff like that. It's just a complete mess of a system. So I'm telling you, mind manipulation and mind control is legit. And that's why I've done videos on marketing and the 7 deadly sins of marketing, because you have been controlled in some form of your life and existence. A lot of this happens in consumerism. Don't think that you're a free, independent thinker, because we all have been indoctrinated and sucked in by something. We all have at some point in our lives, and that's something that we have to admit. And now we have to pull back and discern what is reality and what is fantasy. A lot of the stuff that we learn online is not saying that's not right or accurate or has some form of truth in it, but it can start to get embellished to where it's building up and fueling a fire to where this fantasy of what happens in a very small percentage of life now becomes someone's reality, to where it shapes and molds their lens in life to think, all of these things. And so I just think it's a shame to, politically, we need to bring back the lady and the gentleman culture, and that's where, like, classy conservatism needs to come back on the rise. We cannot have strong conservative men becoming radicalized and becoming fucking assholes, because we will continue to self-destruct ourselves if they go down this path of, like, wake up, guys, getting dating advice from men from, like, Las Vegas and the gambling industry. That's, like, the biggest joke out there. I have a master's degree, and when you've hung out with people in academia, people in academia are not perfect. I'm sure there are people who have PhDs who cheat on their wives and stuff like that, and vice versa, but people don't talk and act like what they do. And, that type of language and behavior that they use is vulgar, it's disgusting, and it's not attractive. And you'll continue to attract desperate and shitty people in your life when you behave that way. So those are some thoughts I have about mind control and manipulation. Feel free to leave some comments if you have any thoughts. And thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please subscribe to this channel. You can help me build it, as well as you can support me on Patreon if you'd like. Okay, thank you. Bye.